All right, sounds good.
All right, well, welcome to Semper Sometimes with Benny. This evening I have Ryan Garza with us, Marine Corps veteran, someone that I've heard a great deal about from different friends and other Marines out there, and also been following him on Instagram and other social media platforms. And it's crazy that somebody that I went to boot camp, I just saw the other day, you guys actually are, you guys also deployed together, I believe, so it's pretty crazy how small the Marine Corps is, man. And when you get together and you know people who know people and stuff like that. So it's really awesome to have you with us, man. And I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to really hop on here and just discuss everything. I'm excited to talk about your life, mental health, everything that you've been through in your journey. So I'm pretty excited for that. So without further ado, Ryan, just introduce yourself for everybody and let us know who Ryan is.
All right. Hello, everybody. I'm Ryan Garza. I joined the Marine Corps when I was 21, and I did 4 tours to Afghanistan. And that last tour is whenever I had gotten struck by an IED, and I broke 8 bones, dislocated 13, and shattered my foot and ankle into powder. And then it was kind of a rough ride from there. I was in the hospital for 13 months. And I kind of thought it was all fun and games at the time. I didn't really understand how bad I was. And I was drinking an insanely large amount. I was with a bunch of Marines at the hospital. They called us the crippled crew because we'd go to bars and there'd be like 6 of us deep in wheelchairs. And then I thought everything was good whenever I was going to get out 13 months later. And that's whenever I realized how dark things could get. I got bad into drinking to where I was going through withdrawals every single day. I had to drink at least a half gallon of vodka a day. And it almost killed me. I didn't think I was going to be able to ever do anything with my life. I thought I was just a broken Marine and, there's nothing I could do. I'm in pain all the time. I'm pissed all the time. And I didn't think I could do anything. And then a group called Soldiers to Summits asked me if I wanted to do a climb in the Andes Mountains and go to Machu Picchu. And I thought it was absolutely insane because my leg was broken. I tried saving it for a while, but it was just crushed up. They told me at the last minute I would have to get it amputated, but I just didn't want to stay in the hospital for a long time. So the thought about climbing a mountain just seemed insane. And they said, well, you have good upper body strength. How about there's these things called side sticks? And I was like, okay, whatever, I'll try it. I'll go. And I remember at the beginning going through Machu Picchu and staying with this Incan village, and then going through the mountains. I could feel my body just breaking. And I mean, it was hard to breathe. I went through the craziest weathers, the blizzards, the hailstorms, all this stuff. And I thought there's no way I'm going to be able to make this. There's no way. It's impossible. And I knew I was going to eventually stop one of the days. It was about 2 weeks out there. And the most freezing I've ever been, the most pain I've ever been in, just constantly going. And I remember one day I was going up a mountain, and then I just looked up, and it was like I could see almost like the silhouette of some mountains. And off to the right, there was a mountain that just looked like a tiger. It had these awesome stripes, like this red, this tan, this black. It just looked amazing. And I looked off to the left, and it was this like a lava rock type stuff. And then it almost felt like I was just being lifted up by my guardian angels, and I just floated to the top. Not literally, but that's kind of what I felt like. I just had this burst of energy, like I could do it. And the final summit was a little over 18,000 feet. And, I did it. And I was like, oh my God. And it gave me hope. And I was like, I can do everything. I can do these things. But Then I got back, and that's whenever I realized I'm back to a dark spot, because now my leg is more crushed than it's ever been. And I got right back into drinking, and that was another time it nearly killed me. And finally, I decided to get the amputation, and they let me pick the day I got the amputation, and so I got it cut off on Friday the 13th, which kind of turned into a good luck day for me. And you know, I was in the hospital and doing some all kinds of things like cognitive process therapy, different stuff for mental health. And I was in one of the darkest times of my life, and that was another time where I thought I couldn't do anything. And I got a message from Randy Couture, and I was like, there's no way that this is fake. And he knew a friend of mine out in Vegas, and she talked about me, and he reached out, and he every year he does all this stuff for Wounded Warriors, and he's a Army Ranger himself, Ranger or Airborne, I forget how it works, but and that kind of opened my eyes to another light of life. And the people that asked me to climb the 14,000 foot, the 18,000 foot summit, asked me to climb a mountain in Colorado, which was over 14,000 feet. And again, I was like, you're crazy. They wanted me to do it 5 months after my amputation. And I was like, there's just no way. There's no way that I could do that. And again, it was just like, you know what? One of those things where it's just like, I'm going to try. So I got the side sticks, and I ended up going up there, and it was one of the hardest climbs, but I finally ended up climbing and made it to the top. And yeah, it was just a very rewarding feeling, and that was my next step in the right direction. Like, even without a leg, I could still kind of press on, and there's still so much I could still do.
So, if you don't mind me asking, man, like you've brought up multiple times so far in just a few minutes of us talking about these dark times, and like when you say that, like what was it specifically? Like I can only imagine like going through 4 doors, and then coming home with a lesser limb, and being away from family and friends, and being away from reality, right? Because you're living in a totally different world, and even by the first deployment, you're now it's kind of become like a lifestyle to you because you've done it this many times, but it's still you're readapting to the world, then you're returning back to deployment life, then you're readapting to the world, and then so what was going on mentally that you were in these quote unquote dark places? Like what do you mean by that? Like was it like the suicide? Like was it alcoholism mixed with suicide? Like what was going on in your mind?
I had just gotten to a point to where I was in so much pain 24/7 that I was drinking so heavily that I couldn't sleep I could probably sleep for about an hour and a half before I started going through withdrawals. And so every single morning I would be getting up and throwing up, and then I would be shaking so bad I would have to put 5 shot glasses out on the table filled with vodka every night before I went to bed. So then I could just tilt it in my mouth, and so I could start the day again. So during those times, I was thinking that I was so useless. There was a huge part of me that wanted to take my life for a long time, but I had this big thing in me, and it annoyed me that I always felt this way for a long time. But I just had a feeling that I was here for a purpose, and if I survived everything I've survived, even as a child, or even growing up, and then the 4 tours, that I had more of a purpose. And those dark days ended up, I would try to heal it with alcohol, and it just turned me into a very violent, just crazy monster. And I didn't see it. I didn't see it as PTSD, really. I didn't see it as isolation. I was just like, hey, this is my recliner. I'm comfortable here, leave me alone. And thinking it was normal, but it just wasn't. And then with the lack of sleep and all that going on, there's times where I hallucinate, and and then that just is like a domino effect for everything that you feel. And I'll never forget my very first anxiety attack. It was March of 2013, shortly after I got out of the Marine Corps. I woke up gasping for air, and I felt my stomach just twisting and turning, and I looked down, and it looked like someone, like I had two babies in my stomach kicking out, or it was insane. And then my hands started to curl in, and I thought there was something wrong with my heart. I mean, my heart was just pounding out of my chest. And for 4 days, I was walking back and forth trying to go through it, but I was too afraid to go to the hospital because I spent so much time. And later down the road, when I found out it was an anxiety attack, that's really when all the hell broke loose. Because now, once I found out what anxiety was, it was just a world of hell. Because anytime I even start feeling like I have anxiety, then it intensifies by a million, just because I know how bad it could get. And I wouldn't wish anxiety on my worst enemy. And so I had to try to figure out a way out of that, and that was by drinking at the time.
So now, when you look back at this and you talk about it, like, where did the alcoholism begin? Like, do you? Because I've had this conversation with other Marines, and I know that, like, the times that I've had where I've been, heavy on the bottle, a lot of it for me was because it was so indoctrinated in the Marine Corps that it was such a, and especially with, what's your MOS? I'm assuming infantry.
I was motor T, but I was a sweep. I was on a sweep team, so my job was actually using the metal detectors to sweep for IDs.
Okay, so so I'm motor T too, but I know that, like, all the amount of drinking that everybody does after a field op, or even during field ops, even though when you're not supposed to. But, like, it becomes second nature. It's okay if we're not doing training, if we're not doing IED lane training, if we're not doing our 5s and 25s training, if we're not doing all this convoy operations training, then we're back at the barracks drinking. That's what we're doing. So, did you find that as your deployments progressed, you began to drink more? Like, how did this issue with alcoholism begin? Was it earlier on in the Marine Corps?
Well, I mean, I always like to have a good time and everything. I don't know if I lost you. I can only see myself now.
No, I can hear you. Yeah, my wife made it so right now it's focused on you.
Okay. So I always like to have a good time and everything like that. But I'll never forget those days where I would drink till 2 a.m. just to wake up at 4 to go PT and all that. And I remember every day working out and working in that sun, thinking, I'm for sure not going to drink today. I'm for sure not going to drink today.
Yeah.
And then they pissed me off so damn bad to where I'm like, okay, well, shit, I wasn't going to drink. Now I'm going to. Yeah. And I think that was a big mental, like, just crazy thing for me. And before I went on my first tour, they were still able to haze and stuff like that. Yeah. And then I got back. I did 2 back-to-back, and I got back, and then all of a sudden they're sitting there, and things were just getting a little too soft, I guess, and people were getting away with a lot more. And so that was another time to where I didn't know much about PTSD or anything, and but I was looking out my window a lot, and I was just getting nervous being at the barracks. So that's kind of whenever I started really hating people and drinking. But it was after my injury to where it was just like they put 30 Marines in one hospital, fill us all with all these meds and stuff. I mean, and it's nothing against that system. They have changed the system and everything. But at that time, it was just like, well, not only that, all of us got deployment money. And so we just went balls to the wall. Anyone that lives in a hospital for 13 months can say that they had a very good reason to be such an alcoholic, because it's repetitive appointments, repetitive things, having to relive everything all the time, being in that pain, and knowing that, then they fill you with all the Oxycontin and all that stuff. And so first thing you start doing is overthinking, man, I could just take this bottle right now and that'll be it. And it was just too much of a thinking, just getting in your thoughts, I guess you could say, in a place like that.
Yeah. So as this was happening, I noticed you had said that, you had issues with other people and that you became violent at times. Did you, did this come with a lot of loss? Did you lose a lot of like family and friends and close people to you?
Yeah. Well, one suicide that hit me, I was actually overseas at the time, and I had gotten blown up one of the times, and I was getting back from my mission, and I thought, or my first sergeant said he needed to talk to me, and he said that, or eventually, or I thought he was just going to check to see if I was okay from the blast. And then he was like, no, just go to work and talk to me after. And then one of them said, hey, you got to go see the wizard, which, is like someone died close to you. So I ran and found out my uncle, who I was very close to, had taken his life. And that's when suicide started to get a little bit more on the real side. And then back in 2016, one of my Marines, I had witnessed him take his life. And it was October 2nd of 2016. And he was having some hard times, and we were FaceTiming, and I was just like, well, hey, let's celebrate our days together. I got blown up on October 3rd, 2011, and his birthday was October 4th. So that's like my stay alive day. And it's like, hey, it's kind of both of our birthdays. Let's celebrate together. And something got him, and he ended up taking his life. And that following Thanksgiving, I didn't want to be around anybody because I didn't want to be a downer, because I knew everyone's going to feel sorry for me and all that stuff. So I just kind of sucked it up, and I went to Golden Corral. I don't know if you've ever been there. Yeah, so I went to Golden Corral, and I'm waiting in line, and I'm just trying my hardest not to bawl my eyes out. I mean, my eyes are so heavy. I'm giving it everything I've got. And this lady behind me was like, are you by yourself? And I was like, yeah. And she gave me a free ticket thing, which was really cool. And I went in still holding it together, trying my best not to flip. And they give me this table that's like in the middle, to where I'm like surrounded by other tables. And I'll never forget, I went back one of the times to whenever I put my plate down in front of me, and I was eating very slowly, and I could feel the tears like about to start pouring from my face. And I looked around, and it was almost like everything just went in slow-mo. It was like I started hearing people's laughs and seeing the love and seeing all this. I could hear almost like their heartbeats and the sound of the silverware hitting the plates, but it was nothing but good stuff. And it kind of took a lot of weight off of me. And so from that point, I was like, Thanksgiving always kind of had something special about it. And so the next Thanksgiving, something was running through my mind. I couldn't shake it. But I didn't do anything. But it's still, something was going on. And then the next Thanksgiving, I saw a homeless guy, and I gave him $10. And he was so happy, and seeing that hope in his eye, even when he looked very weak and beaten, it kind of gave me a little bit of weight off my shoulders, but still not enough, but not what I was looking for. And then the very next Thanksgiving, I was like, you know what? I'm gonna get a turkey and make some plates for the homeless. And when I ordered that turkey, all of a sudden I felt like a big relief and weight off my shoulders. So I was just like, you know what? I'm gonna get a ham too. And then I felt more weight off. Then I was like, I'm going to get some sides too. And then it turned into turkeys and hams and sides and desserts and all this stuff. And I had over 100 plates all over my apartment that I was making these plates for the homeless. And I remember thinking how bad my back was killing me, having to bend over doing each and every plate for each and everything. But it was the biggest relief. And I went out to give these plates. And some people were thankful, some people were different. And I'll never forget, I rolled up to this dumpster where there's about 14, I believe, homeless people, and they actually looked a little scared when I drove up. Like maybe they're used to people throwing shit out of them or saying stuff or anything like that. And but I got out of the truck and I had about a bunch of plates in my hand, and they were so grateful. And then one of the guys came back and he goes, "Do you think I could have a plate for my friend?" And I see this guy kind of off to the side, just staring off in space, and he was like, he's blind. So I gave him like all this extra stuff, but to see that hope in their eyes, that's exactly what I needed. And that's whenever I knew giving back is the way I could heal from this. And so now I've made that a yearly tradition to make plates for the homeless. And that's what helped me on, that was a big part of what saved me during that time.
Wow. Now, when it comes to like, so now, with everything that you've gone through with, with the deployments and the mental health and the alcoholism, and where do you find yourself now? Like where, like in today's life, right? Like when you're navigating through life, what are you doing to stay in this positive mindset? Like what are you doing daily?
One of my daily things, every single day I'll either post something either inspirational or just funny to make people laugh along, followed by hope everyone has an amazing day. And something about that, that's one thing that I do that just helps a lot. And also I am working on finishing up my book. It's called Disturbed Earth: My Journey from Guilt to Forgiveness. And it should be published by October 3rd of this year. That's my Stay Alive Day. And working on that, I tell most of my story and stuff like that. And I made a 5-step process that I actually live by every single day that helps me out of that dark spot. And at first it was just kind of about writing a book of my life. And I was with one of my best friends in the world, Tim Lane. He was a 4-time world champion kickboxer, and then also our publisher, Antonio White, also known as Pitch Freaks, and then it was just going to be my story, and then he was like, we need to make a process to help people. So I made a 5-step process, and I was living by it every day. Everything was going good, but then a suicide happened, and what I do every single time there's a suicide is I go to the liquor store and I buy a half gallon of vodka or Jameson and I take it straight to the dome. And it's a regular thing where I just do it without even thinking. So the 5 steps were great on an everyday thing, but I needed to figure out something else. And so something else that I did was I make pens. And for an example, I do wood turning. And so a pen like this with the shapes and everything, I am able to cut into or turn into the wood and think 5 steps ahead while making the pen. And I realized that if I could keep thinking 5 steps ahead, then I won't think of those bad things in the past. And so I call it shaping my day into something beautiful. And the first day that I had that suicide, I came back home and I grabbed a bunch of stuff that I was going to sell and I took it to Goodwill. And that was kind of like my good deed. And then I came back and I started shaping a pen, and that's when things started. And that was the very first time I was able to deal with the suicide and not have a drink. And so, and it kind of made it into my everyday thing to, think of a good deed and also think of positive moving forward and not moving backward, because all those times that I was living in the past, it almost took my life. And so, and then sadly, one of my friends I told you about, Tim Lane, who helped me from start to finish with the book, he recently had taken his life. But it brought me together with who was my best friend at the time, still is my best friend, but now is the love of my life, Yahida, who, and having that gave me more of a purpose. and it made me realize how much I was isolating. And and now that I'm actually doing something right, and thinking positive, working on the book, working on shirts for the book, and doing whatever I can to help other people, that that helps me forgive myself for things that I felt all that guilt about all those years. And that's
Yeah.
kind of what I explain in the book, that with mental health, guilt is one of the biggest things. And I'm not saying for everyone, but for me, I realized that that's more than half of the weight I was carrying. There's a bunch of things that I carry from bad experiences, traumatic situations, but
Yeah.
guilt or feeling like I let people down who took their lives, or all that stuff, is what weighed on me the most. And once I was able to forgive myself and tell myself, shit, this was not your fault. This is what happens. You're doing your best to keep your mental health. And I had to start focusing on my health instead of looking for, everything else
Yeah.
at that moment. Because, that's whenever you start falling and it's harder to get up.
Wow. Wow, man, it's so sad. Like I love doing these episodes, and I love having this podcast because I get to learn from other people, and I get to hear the stories of other people. But then at the same time, it's like while these stories are so beautiful because of like the full circle they come in at the same time while they're being told, it's sad. You know what I mean? Like the loss of life, and but then at the same time, like the forgiveness of life and the gratitude and the stories of growth, and at the end of the day, man, like there's a reason for everything that happens to us in our lives, and we're exactly where we're supposed to be. When when people listen to this podcast, when they listen to it, they're going to be exactly where they need to be. You are placed exactly where you need to be right now, and it's awesome to hear you talk about the growth and from where you've come and to where you've gone, and and when it comes to like the guilt, I agree. I think that's a huge part that a lot of people just can't get over. Like a lot of times we think about like when things happen to ourselves, it's okay. Like we're like, oh, this is supposed to
Mhm.
happen. But like when things happen to other people, we start to take this blame that like I could have changed it. I could have done something different. I could have, what if I did this, or especially with you having these 4 different deployments, like with all the stuff that you've been through, traumatic, and just everything. It's just for you, and like you said before earlier on, like with you coming home and wondering, okay, well, why did I make it home? Why did I make it home and this person didn't, or why did why am I still here type thing. I'm glad that you've been able to in this time realize that there's a reason for you being here, and I'm glad that after all the deployments and after all the IED blasts and the loss of your limb and the loss of your these things, I'm glad that you've been able to turn around and realize, okay, well, I'm here for a reason. So what is that reason? Like at this time, what do you believe is the reason why you're here? Why, what realization have you come to that is why Ryan's still here?
My biggest goal is to give people hope and to make them realize that they could do anything, because there's been so many times in my life where I'm like, there's no way I could do this because of this. And then I try and I do it. And I'm like, I literally thought that that was impossible. And so I'm thinking, did I make the impossible possible, or was it possible the entire time? And so that's my goal, is to show people it's possible the entire time. And if you want to just try it, go for it. And, I hadn't competed with sports or anything since I was younger. And last year, when I was starting to get myself together and I was working on the book, doing well, I got asked to go to the National Veterans Wheelchair Games. And I was like, gosh, I hadn't competed in forever, this and that. But, and I just went for, a bunch of different sports. And it was out in New York City. And I got 1 bronze, 4 silver, and 7 gold medals. And
Wow.
so that was that point where I was like, oh my God, well, even with one leg, I still can swim, because I swam and played water polo growing up. I ran track, so I was doing shot put and javelin, and I was like, oh my God, I can do these things. And so, and then that kind of pushed. So I'm doing it again this year, and then it's like, well, what else can I do? I never thought in a million years I could go snowboarding. I was like, it's hard enough with two legs, but but I always wanted to do it, and I was like, I'm gonna try with everything I've got. And I went to the Winter Sports Clinic this year, and now I'm finally hitting blues without even falling, and I mean, doing something I never thought I could do, and that was just something else that gave me that much hope. So just to show people and to give them reason for living and to try those things that they think that they can't do. I mean, there's so many things that if we just tried, then that could save our lives. Even if it's just something that you think there's no way it could happen. Because I'm telling you, that one summit of, in Peru, I never thought I could ever do anything like that in my life. It was painful. It broke me. But when I got to that final summit and being next to that American flag we were flying and just being around wounded warriors, that's whenever I knew that I had something in me to give back. And I knew that there was some part of my heart that wants to show people how to, or not, I don't want to say show them how to stay alive, but show them how great it is to be alive and what we're capable of.
Bro, and I gotta tell you, man, like that's something that like I'm trying to get better. I'll be real with you. I'll be honest. Like something that I deal with is a lot of times I just feel like I don't want to say hopeless, but I just feel lazy, like lethargic. Like I don't want to get up. I don't want to go to the gym, or I sleep too much and stuff. And this past weekend, I had a friend of mine. He's a double amputee, and he's partially blind. Well, mostly blind. Out of his one eye, he can see like a little bit. But he had reached out to me last week, and he was like, "Hey, man, I'm going to go to this 5K here in Jersey in the local town." And he was like, "Would you want to go with me?" And I had forgotten. I've gone to this 5K every year since it started. I just forgot that it was this year with everything going on with the baby and with the kids. I completely forgot. With the newborn that it was this past weekend. So he had reached out to me and was asking me to go with him, and I was like, of course, man, I'll go with you. So I went with him, and I guess the night before he had gone to like a bathhouse to like go relax and go like do like a sweat session and go through some like relaxation and stuff. And he also does jujitsu and he rolls and stuff. So like I guess like he had put on one of his legs, and it kind of messed up his leg, and it caused irritation. So then he was like, "Hey man, I'm gonna do the 5K, but I'm only gonna do a mile." And he kept apologizing to me, and I was like, "Dude, you're getting off of your ass out of bed at 7 a.m. in the morning with no legs, barely any vision, to go do a 5K, and there's other people in the world that aren't getting up at that time any day of the week, and they're not walking a mile, and they're not doing this or that, and then we went to do this, and I brought my kids, and my kids were looking at him, and it was just such an amazing thing to see, because like other people in the crowds were like looking at him, and these little kids were looking at him, and they were watching him pass by, and clearly he couldn't see this, but like I saw it. And I was able to vision it, and I was able to see it from my own eyes, and I was able to see, the pride that he was giving these kids, like the hope that he was giving these children, and it was just such an amazing thing for me, and it made me realize, like, bro, like if I'm complaining, and I have a house, and I have a happy family, I have all of these things, and like, why am I not doing more when I'm fully capable of doing more? And then when I hear stories like you sharing your story and what you're doing and what you've overcome and, what you're trying to do, it really is an amazing thing, because, I wish that it didn't, for me, it's like I need to wake up, because like it shouldn't take like an act of me losing a limb to realize that I can do all of these things. Like it shouldn't have to take an act of, something, God forbid, it shouldn't take loss to find out gain. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and there's just been what I've learned, and something else I speak about on the book, is that to stop thinking about these things that happen to us as curses and realize that they're lessons and blessings. Because all these things that I had dealt with, I wanted to help people who kind of dealt with all that kind of stuff or just traumatic things in general. And I started volunteering at the local or at the county jail teaching AA and NA. And that's when I was like, you know what, I want to get into social work and I want to help these guys get out and, find a better life and find their purpose. And, all these things were going good. I never thought I could go to school, especially after brain injuries and stuff. And then I got the VA call to where I had to do a reevaluation, which I thought I was completely done with that. And they wanted me to do it during finals, and it broke my concentration and I snapped. I ended up going to the VA office and kicking in the door, bashing through a window with a rock. I had a hammer and I kicked open the door, threw a chair through the door, and I just completely annihilated, screaming at them, asking them. I just wanted them to leave me alone, and that changed me. And then I was so distracted, I couldn't go back to school. I became angry again, and all these things started to happen. But that was one of those blessings I had no idea about, because what I've realized is people help me the most when they could relate to me. I always had trouble with counseling and all that stuff because I'm like, you might have read this in a book, but you don't know what I'm feeling or seeing and stuff like that. Amen. And so every single time something bad happens to me, I thank God that it happened to me, because that means I could relate to that many more people. And that means I could help that many more. So that's when something bad happens to me, that ended up turning me in a different direction to write this book and to talk about the things. And one of the very last chapters is resources. I tell different brain treatments or different treatments or programs I've been to, how it helped me mentally, physically, and I give contact information. Because if there's all these people who have these struggles and they could read exactly what I went through and be like, oh my God, I feel those same things, all this stuff. And then they have those resources, then maybe they could trust it. Because when they come up to all of us and they're like, oh, there's this treatment, we're thinking you're just going to put me in another mental ward where, we're up by 5 a.m. in these crazy things, going to bed at 10 in a crazy locked up room. I mean, everybody's afraid to go to these treatment places because they don't trust any of them. I mean, that's how I was. I don't want to speak for anyone else, but to be able to explain
I felt the same way when I came home and I went to the Orange County VA, and I got some counseling for a couple of sessions. And I remember, like, me and my wife talk about it all the time. Like, I remember me and my wife, we never fight. To this day, like, I've been with my wife for 13 years. Me and my wife never get into heated arguments. Like, once in a while, we'll have like arguments or conversations about money. Like 9 times out of 10, it's like money. It's like bills and this and that and the third. Like, what do we need? What do we not need? Stuff like that. But me and my wife never really get into these heated arguments. And I remember, like, me and my wife talking about it, and I asked her, like, it was like my 3rd or 4th session, and it was an hour and a half drive there. Then it was like the meeting. Then it was an hour and a half home. And I asked my wife one night. She was like, "Hey, how do you think this is going?" And I was like, I'm like, it's fucking useless. And then my wife was like, "I agree." And I was like, "Oh wait." I was like, "Wait, really?" And she was like, "Doug, my wife literally was like, Doug, we've never fought this much until you started going to this counseling." And I was telling her, I was like, because it's not doing anything for me. Like, they're trying to talk to me. Like, I remember like talking to the psychiatrist, and it was like session 4 or 5, and I was still 5 years old. And I was like, bro, like I'm 22 years old in Afghanistan right now, and like we're still talking about me being 5. Like, when are we going to get to the traumatic parts of my life that I'm here to discuss? And then, like, with this person not being a veteran or never having gone through anything that I'm going through, I'm like, bro, you read it in some book. You believe that you know everything because you've been told it by the doctors in your schooling that you know everything. And I'm like, I can't relate to you at all. And I've found, like, through this podcast that I've had a lot of people tell, like, a lot of friends of mine or people that I've deployed with, I've had people that I haven't spoken to in years reach out to me on Messenger and just be like, "Hey, man, I just want you to know I've been listening to your podcast and it's changed my life." Like, I've had people tell me, like, "Listen, man, like, I won't go to the VA, I won't go get help, but listening to your podcast and listening to these other people talk about their stories is encouraging me to go get help." And it's just been a blessing since that. Uh-oh. Hillary! What happened? Hold on one second. I'm gonna have to edit that out.
You know?
I got you.
Okay. Yeah, sorry about that. I don't know what happened. It just ended up freezing.
It's good. But yeah, man, so I've definitely been there, and not to the extent that you have, but I definitely understand that, and which is why I created the podcast. Was able to just, like I have an uncle that I bring up quite often on the podcast, and he's been, an alcoholic my whole life. He's in his late 50s, and he's still an alcoholic. Recently, he was, sent to the hospital, and for dehydration and all this stuff. And the only thing he's doing is just drinking a handle of Jack a day and Coors Light. And it just sucks because like I've never met the man sober, and I'm 31. And it's just like, when I try to have conversations with him and stuff like that, but it's just, a lot of times people just don't want to. So some kind of ending comments, what, from someone like yourself who's gone through all of this, these feelings of isolation, these feelings of I don't want to speak to people, these feelings of I want to be alone, or these feelings of like I'm not good enough, or the guilt and stuff like that, like what advice do you have for people that don't want to notice? Because a lot of times we know that it's there, but we don't want to notice it. We don't want to admit that it's there. What kind of things, like telltale signs, or like what kind of advice do you have for people that are going through the stuff that you've been through?
It's kind of hard to say, but the way I did it was kind of like just letting go and fight, because after I was, like I said, I was so skeptical about getting the help I needed and stuff like that. But whenever it came down to the point to where I was throwing up blood and I was shaking really bad, I mean, I was looking at myself in the mirror, and like whenever I really started to hate myself every time, and like looking at myself in the mirror, that's whenever I was like, I'm willing to try anything. And it was miserable for a long time. It was miserable, but I was always willing to try. And if people are willing to try, then that is, the big, and people be like, oh, how cliche, of course, try. But the thing is that I did a lot of suffering to get to this point. And I haven't been this happy in such a long time. And whenever I figured out that, I've got to stay positive and I got to survive, that's when everything else started falling into place. It was finding my purpose that brought me back, and then feeling the love from someone else, and knowing that I'm not alone, and just that I can turn to someone.
Yeah.
That's whenever it just started to being a thing. So just being open-minded and asking yourself, what's it worth to you?
Yeah. Wow. Now, was it hard for you to open up? Like when you say that you knew this, you knew this person, you love this person already, now she's the love of your life. Did you find it hard to open up and to not want to isolate? Did you find it hard to give yourself mentally, physically, and emotionally to this person? Like, was it hard for you?
Well, I had been single for a very long time, and I haven't even attempted for a long time. I mean, a while. I had tried here and there, but I just knew I was not mentally fit to, for anything like that. And the thing with me and Yahida is that we were best friends already before we actually started talking. And then when she had moved here, we were still like, I was talking, but there were still certain things to where, I'm not used to being in a relationship, stuff like that. But when she had came here, I had a very bad anxiety attack that lasted about 4 days, to where I'm throwing up and I'm cramping up. My whole body's cramping up. I mean, I'm in pain. I can't breathe. I'm having to put this oxygen tank on me. And for 4 days, she waited on me hand and foot. She listened to me whenever I was like feeling like I'm on the verge of possibly having to go to the hospital or I'll just die, getting that tunnel vision. And just I'd be shaking and she would help put my oxygen mask back on. And certain things I was like, oh my God. And she was there, and when I would be cramping up, she would rub CBD all over my body to where, the pain wasn't as severe. And to her to deal with all that and
Yeah.
stay by me, that's whenever I was like, oh my God, like I've never had that in my entire life. And
Wow.
that's when I was like, I want to start opening up and I want to be better. And I've
Mm.
seen myself change in the greatest way, because now I'm more willing to go out or do things or stuff. And because when I'm alone, I'm like, this is my comfort zone. And
Yeah.
having her around, it just makes me realize how much life is, how great life can actually be, especially when you know that you're not alone and you can open up. And it doesn't have to be someone you love, or it could be a best friend, a family member, or a doctor, whoever. But once you have that trust to where you can finally open up and say exactly what, and if you need to draw tears, you draw tears, whatever. If you have that sense of security, that was something that really helped me, and that's been helping me with my nightmares and my night terrors. They still have it. I still have them, but they've gone down so much. Being able to know that's there.
Wow. Wow, man. That's amazing, man. And I'm glad that you were able to find each other and will be able to reconnect in a different way. And and listen, man, like it's crazy what God has in store for us, and we don't even know it. It's crazy the connections that He creates without us understanding. You know, like even like for instance, like Yahida. I met Yahida years ago as reservists. And then we didn't speak for I don't know how long. We were Facebook friends, and then all of a sudden I started my podcast, and she saw it, and then we did our first episode, and then I invited her back, and then she connected me with you, and we connected with the Marine Rapper, and and now I'm here doing this with you, and it's just so crazy, man. The things that we don't understand our future can hold. And I think that's with listening to your story and listening what you're doing with the book and with what you're doing with these different sports and these different accolades, man, it really just goes to show you that like committing suicide is just the end of something that's temporary. And you don't know what tomorrow could have held for you. You don't know what tomorrow could have held for your love life, for your career. Like you don't know what could have come tomorrow to change everything. And it's so awesome, man, to see you living out what you were trying to find. Like it's a beautiful thing when you're searching for purpose and you don't know what it is, and then watching you live through that purpose. Like I don't know you, crazily, right? We just met and we've only spoken twice, but it's awesome to hear your story and then correlate it with you walking in purpose,
Thank you.
because it's and it must feel even more surreal for you, but even for myself, like for a very long time I've dealt with that as well. Like, okay, what is my purpose? I went from being on recruiting duty for 4 straight years, and I felt like that was my purpose, and then all of a sudden that life turned upside down. No longer was on recruiting duty. Now here I am with this podcast because my wife was like, hey, maybe you should start a podcast. And now here I am almost a year later. I'm 140 episodes in, and I didn't realize that 140 episodes is a lot for 1 year. And then I reached out to other people, and they're like, "Dude, I have a podcast for 3 years, and I only have 80." So, so
That's
and it's just,
awesome.
just being able to meet with other people and talk with different veterans and talk with different people about mental health and talk about alcoholism and everything that they're dealing with. It just, from the bottom of my heart, man, I really appreciate it. Because at the end of the day, whether this episode gets one listen and it changes one life, that's all that matters. Is As
Yep.
long as it's doing something for one person and one person only, and the amount of help that it gives me. Like this alone right now, I'm not being selfish, but realistically, if it didn't help anybody else out, it helps me every time I do a podcast. Like it gives me just the camaraderie back. It gives me time to listen and to learn and to reflect, and to hear things from other people's perspective, be able to learn from other people's lives. So I definitely thank you for that, man. Do you have
Absolutely.
anything that you want to leave us with? Anything that you want to just talk about? And then also, where can we find you? That would be the
Um,
last.
I would well, I'm making a couple friends of mine and I are making different designs for my shirts for the book and stuff, and they're gonna say certain things that I say. One of them is "Keep Hope Alive," and that's in honor of Tim Lane. And then what I say on most of my posts is "Never end the fight. Quitting isn't an option, and it's
Mm,
tough, not impossible."
amen.
And so
Amen.
those are going to be the things that I want to drive people to remember, because it's tough, but it's not impossible. Quitting is never an option and never in the fight. And just drive that in and know that there's purpose out there. You just got to look for it and find it. And
Amen.
that's when fighting for something is going to be the greatest gift in the world.
Wow. Wow, man. Thank you so much for that. And where can we find you, Ryan?
Um, right now, um, I'm on Facebook at Ryan Garza 22. Um, and I am working on a website now. What we're going to be putting the book in, or about the book, and then for merchandise and stuff like that. But
Wow.
yeah, I'm terrible with technology, so I'm still getting used to like having different stuff. And
Yeah, I
but I'm
got you.
getting there, and I'll definitely keep you posted whenever I
Yeah,
do
definitely. Yeah,
decide.
let me know with the definitely let me know with the book. Let me know with the shirts and stuff. I definitely want to help you. You know, get as much of those as you can sold. I definitely want to help. With everything, man. And especially it takes a. I want to again just closing, man. I really want to just thank you so much for the story. For you talking about everything because a lot of people don't have I don't want to say this the wrong way, but a lot of people have suppressed things so much that they can't speak about them and that they don't know how to speak about them. So the fact that you're able to come onto a platform and be able to come onto a live and be able to be open and honest and be able to talk about your bouts with sobriety and talking about your issues with mental health and your issues with the VA or the issues with your violence or all these different things, like the fact that you're able to do that, man, is such a pleasure. It's such an honor. It's such a just that I'm just so thankful for it because other people are going to be listening to this episode and they're gonna be able to see themselves in what you're talking. They're going to be able to see themselves and be like, wow, I didn't notice that about myself because because sometimes you really don't until you hear somebody else talk about their story. You're
Mhm.
all of a sudden you start to align with it and you're like, wow, I've done that or I've seen myself do that or maybe as a friend or a spouse you're like, wow, I've seen so and so do that, maybe I need to talk with that person. So this really does open up those conversation lines, man, and I just want to thank you for coming on and talking about that.
Absolutely. Any way I could help, I'm always down for it. And I appreciate you for everything that you do.
Thanks a lot, brother. Well, I hope to have you again. Definitely have another episode down the line. And thanks again so much, man, for talking about everything. And I hope you have a good rest of the night, and we'll see you soon.
Sounds good, brother. You too. Take
All
care.
right. Thanks a lot.